Morning in Garforth, and welcome to the Every Bus vlog. From time to time, buses come on my radar because they're obscure or hard to ride. Today, we're going to look at one such bus and, as we ride it, try to figure out why it exists. I've driven to Garforth, arriving just after 6 AM on an unremarkable Thursday to catch this bus in question, the 174A. It's a one-a-day variant of Arriva's 2-hourly 174 from Wakefield to Wetherby. The 174A is a part route service that runs from Garforth to Wetherby, but diverts to circle Thorp Arch Trading Estate, which gives us a clue about why it exists. This is what we're riding today. The route is somewhat direct, north from Garforth to Barwick, then east to Aberford, then north through Bramham and Clifford, no sign of any big red dogs, then Boston Spa. The 174 then continues directly to Wetherby, taking just 9 minutes before terminating at the bus station. The 174A, however, turns right, away from Wetherby, briefly shares its route with the number 7, the Harrogate one, not the Leeds one. It serves first the village of Thorp Arch, then does a lap of the trading estate, adding an extra quarter of an hour to the journey. On the morning I rode it, for much of the run I was the only passenger. There were a handful who got on at Boston Spa, and then got off again around the trading estate. The first major landmark peculiar to this route is the British Library, barely visible through the dirty window in the dark. Tom Scott, of course, did an excellent video on the British Library, but briefly, whenever a book or certain other media is published in the United Kingdom, the publisher is required, by law, to send a copy to the British Library for safekeeping. There are half a dozen other deposit libraries who can ask for a copy too, but the British Library doesn't even have to ask. Sending them a copy is just part of the cost of doing business. In return, the British Library acts as the ultimate insurance policy against lost media. It stores every book it receives, basically forever. And this is where they do it, in warehouses just east of Wetherby on a trading estate. Your local library can, for a fee, get you a book from here through an interlibrary loan. It's a whole thing. We're not going to go into it. What's relevant is that the British Library gets 4 buses per day, weekdays only. In the morning, the 174A from Garforth arrives at 7:20. The 412 from York arrives just after 8:30. In the evenings it happens in reverse, the 174A heading back to Garforth just after 5, and the 412 heading back to York about past. It's not a huge stretch to figure out why those specific timings. Getting people there before 9 AM, arriving to take them home after 5 PM, these are work services in all but name. After the British Library, we head onto the trading estate proper. There are bus stops on Street 5, Avenue C, Street 7, Avenue E, Street 1, and then Street 5 again on the way out. Yes, those are the real road names. Thorp Arch apparently goes for the say-what-you-see approach to naming roads. Supposedly the most notable feature of the estate is a full-size pirate ship, the HMS Thorp Arch. The ship used to overlook a play area, but was later moved to the retail park. Unfortunately, I couldn't find it on a map, and I certainly couldn't see it in the pitch black of the morning. After Thorp Arch, we head into Wetherby, where we terminate at the bus station. Well, near the bus station. See, Wetherby bus station isn't really a bus station, it's a bus shelter that's a bit out of the way. There's only room for 1 or 2 buses, and the 174A, being the third, couldn't fit. So the driver just let me off on the main road. At this point I was in Wetherby. I thought about hopping back on the 174A, which was now in service as the 174, and riding it back to Garforth where I left my car. But I thought better of it. Wetherby's a nice place. I suppose the biggest draw for me was the Wetherby Whaler, the fish and chip restaurant of some renown. Of course, being barely breakfast time, it was shut. I ended up heading to Morrison's for some breakfast to wait for the sunrise. For a supermarket cafe, it was actually really nice. Would recommend. Stomach filled, I headed back to the bus station, and along the way I saw this weird thing. It's a little path that connects the bus station with the high street. What's weird about it is this sign. Moto are a chain of service stations. They're little shopping centres just off the motorway. I assume they kindly funded this to grease the skids a little in opening the highly profitable Wetherby services on the A1M. I will admit, it was nice having somewhere to sit. Now very much daylight, the 174 back to Garforth pulled in and the driver disappeared to have his breakfast. Frankly, I don't blame him. He started his day at 6 AM with a local Wakefield service, then he drove all the way up here, and after 3 hours driving a bus in rush hour traffic, I'd need a break too. Eventually I boarded and we were on our way. The trip back to Garforth was much brighter, and we could finally appreciate the views. I mean, this is much better scenery than a wall of black, right? Also of note, the 174 and, by extension, the 174A are operated using MIDI buses, which we've talked about before. Given the relatively low demand for this route, everyone got a double seat, which is pretty much essential when you're trying to film, quite honestly. I'm sure the 174A in the summer months would be a beautiful route. The 174 certainly is, and seeing as it doesn't go anywhere near Leeds city centre, it does keep moving pretty rapidly. As we got closer to Garforth, the bus did fill up a little, but not much. The bus carries on to Wakefield, but I left my car in Garforth, so this is where I got off. We've been through Garforth before on the number 9, but this is our first time properly visiting. I'm showing you some footage I took earlier in the darkness first. There really wasn't much open at the time, just a budgeons, that was it. I didn't really get much of an impression of Garforth at all when I was flying through on the number 9. But visiting in the daytime, Garforth's surprisingly busy. I mean, it shouldn't really come as a surprise, it's the only big town anywhere nearby, but somehow it still did. Well, this is where I'd left my car, so we've reached our final stop for today, halfway along the route. Remember, these videos go up on Patreon whenever they're done. You can watch them early for £5 a month, or just watch them free and ad-free every other Friday. And whatever else you do, don't forget to thank your driver. Well, that was the first bus I had to drive out to, and it won't be the last. There's a train from Leeds at 5:55 AM that would supposedly have got me here just about on time. Unfortunately, the park and ride buses don't run that early, so I would have had to park in Leeds city centre. The only station between Leeds and Garforth is Cross Gates, and that's not really any help either. Also, I would have basically had to drive past Garforth and pay the exorbitant ticket prices. Plus, would you trust a northern train to run on time that early? I wouldn't.